We started, okay? So as we know, no code words. We pronounce the names of the little bugs in reverse. Vic, right? I mean, or some
right. Divuk. Is that cognate with Divuk?
I guess it would be Divic. So we're starting our usual. Today's Tuesday, just for our international friends all the way from North Pole to South Pole. We have direct translation from David, and I from Beersheba, Bob Dorsky from Atlanta, Georgia, Karen from Ohio. Bob mentioned last time before we start, get a little introduction. So I'm just getting overall introduction. Today is January 31st, 2023, 5,783rd year. If we count correct dates, and we're going with our presentation today, Bob. I guess 14-minute special presentation followed by discussions and picking for the next topic and whatnot. So, Bob, we're passing the baton to you. Kick it off. Go at it.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Last week, one of the members you can all hear me, right?
Yes.
Good. Last week, one of the members graciously told us a little bit about their personal relation with their daughter and her relationships. And from that, I thought maybe it would be interesting to discuss Kiddushin. And I thank that member for last week. I'm not going to speak about that. I want to use this as a chance to stimulate discussion. So I'm going to speak about Kiddushin as a springboard to discussing the Jewish notion of individual responsibility as opposed to and contrasted to the Western culture we live in which people don't have individual responsibility, they have individual rights. And I think that would make a very interesting discussion. And I know we'll start here, and I have a feeling, Lev, that this could go on for several weeks. Is that correct?
But we'll give you a warning sign at 12 minutes, so don't worry about it. Karen, can you tilt your camera slightly? Part of the head it gets a little bit slightly. You only see a little bit more. Okay, now you see better. Okay, thanks.
That's
so
better.
Let me just go through a bunch of things. Let me just go through a bunch of things to stimulate discussion. Judaism demands of each individual a specific part to play in God's plan. It is up to us to accept our role without question. And we all have many roles. We know about the Kohen Gadol, the Kohen, the Levi, the Israeli, the Ger Toshav, the Betula, the Na'ara. We know what the obligations of a Mitzri convert is in terms of who they're allowed to marry. We know what happens with a mamzer in terms of who they're allowed to marry. So we do know that Judaism assigns roles, and we also know Kabbalistically we're assigned roles. Most of us here are Beinani. If someone's a tzaddik, good, more power to you. But we also know that it is almost impossible. The Alter Rebbe teaches us it's almost impossible to transform from a Beinani to a tzaddik, and certainly not vice versa, because, as I've said, and referring to Torah, we're all assigned a role in life, and we have to accept that role in life.
According to, just one correction, according to the Alter Rebbe, most of us are Roshoyim V'Tovlo.
Let me do
somebody who never makes a mistake, except that he only wants to, but he never does make a mistake.
Let me do my whole presentation, and then everyone can tear me to shreds afterwards. It's okay, because I'm sure I'm not always right.
You know it is, Bob. You know how there's Hasidim, so you can't hold them back.
Anyway, for those of you who Rabbi Raphael Hirsch, Samson Raphael Hirsch wrote Horeb. It's one of the most beautiful books I've ever read. It was written, I think, in the 1950s, and it's very poetic. And he contrasts the notion of we each have different obligations to the fact of what it means to love your fellow Jew. He writes, the administration of the household is twofold. It consists of first acquiring the largest possible quantity of useful assets, meaning money, basically, and in general, use of those assets for the purpose of the household. The second part of the household is the The second part of the administration of the household is in the wise day-to-day use of what has been acquired in distributing it fairly among the members of the household and in continually watching over the individual members and their training for life's task. The first, the acquiring of money, is the task of the husband. This is Raphael Hirsch writes this. And the second is the task of the wife. Now, this is the interesting part. The welfare of the Jews flowers only in and through the home. And it is there that the younger generation is brought up for God in the temple meaning the home, where the fear and love of God and trust of God are planted and cultivated and realized in actual life. The task can only be performed by man and woman together, neither by the man alone nor by the woman alone. For that reason, God planted love in the breast of man and woman, love for each other. And then he goes on, this is the beautiful part. After he says that man and women each have distinct roles, listen to what Rabbi Hirsch writes. The woman is highly prized in Israel. She is to be the priestess of the home. If our law does not assign to her a part in the public life, because women generally, for instance, can't be a witness in a trial or a judge, if the law does not assign a part in the public life, it gives her a high position in the home, in the sphere of her vocation. Our law demands of the husband deep love, regard, and respect towards her, and says, he who loves his wife like himself and honors her more than himself, only such one fulfills his duty as a husband. The wife should be the holiest possession of the husband, and we'll talk about Kinyan in a minute, that she should be consecrated. He should belong only to her and to his home, with every object that he acquires, with every faculty that he possesses, with every joy that comes from him and his whole being. The husband should see in his wife the being who perfects his home, basically the great central pillar of the household.
That's me exactly.
Of course. Now, this is interesting because from the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, and you know the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch is not halacha. Sometimes it falls short, but it writes this, which is an interesting view as to why do we get married in a Jewish sense. And the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch writes, every man is obligated to get married in order to fulfill the mitzvah of propagation. And if we have time, we can talk about that later. And of course, this is diametrically opposed to Western thought, where we get married so that we can go to Cancun and Hawaii. You know, it's just a different view. The younger generation doesn't get married to propagate, but that's how Judaism looks at the world. And the Shulchan Aruch goes on to say, when you have begotten a son and a daughter, you have fulfilled the mitzvah of propagation, and provided that you have created a son and a daughter who can also propagate. Even though you have fulfilled the mitzvah of propagation, you are forbidden to remain without a wife. You should marry a woman capable of bearing child, and on and on and on. Just to get on to the issue of Kinyan, Kinyan, of course, is in a transaction. It's the buying and selling, and we talk about Kinyan in relationship to marriage. Both the Ramban and other scholars note, and I'm not even going to read this, I'm just going to paraphrase it, that the husband in no way owns the wife. Kinyan is an obligation. It's a matter of consecration. It is a way of a husband saying, I accept ketubah, I accept my responsibilities towards my wife. And also, the Ramban writes that in terms of a get is different than a shtar. When you write a shtar, there has to be notarization, there has to be questioning of it, has to be reproven before it's implemented. But a get is not treated that way because it's not a shtar. A woman is neither bought nor sold nor owned by a husband. And the ketubah and the get actually is the proof.
You realize, Bob, that as soon as you mentioned the word Rambam, David's ears perked up because he's a resident expert on Rambam. Just
okay, so he can fill into that.
You're putting me in trouble here.
Listen,
anyway,
we're a club of perplexed. We're in trouble. By definition, we're already in trouble. We can't make it anymore.
Right.
Go ahead, Bob. Sorry.
Now, Torah also seems to say that procreation is only the obligation of a man and not a woman, but there's been much rabbinical discussion that is not necessarily the case. Obviously, it takes two to make children, and that a woman is simply honored by fulfilling the mitzvah. A woman is looked at as spiritually superior to a man, and it is considered by some of the rabbis that the obligation to procreate was given to a man because a man needs this mitzvah in order to do his obligation. A woman does not need this mitzvah to do her obligation.
Not only that, in order to survive. I didn't follow that rule, I wouldn't be around, you know. I wouldn't eat it, so my wife wouldn't cook.
Now, other rabbis claim that the obligation to procreate is a time-bound mitzvah, and therefore the women are not obligated. I don't personally understand that at all. Maybe someone can explain that to me, because I don't see where procreating is a time-bound mitzvah unless people make love at the same time each week. Let's see, what else see.
And that's a dentist talking, listen to that.
Yeah, really. And also the idea of procreating, it says to Adam and Chava that it's spoken in the plural, so it's not even clear that the mitzvah does not fall upon a woman. And also it's thought that the line that you should be fruitful, multiply is not a commandment. Some rabbis interpret that as a blessing, and think that the obligation to procreate actually fell upon us after the flood to Noah. So I'll just read in conclusion, because I think we see the major points, and we can go on with this in our discussions. This is my conclusion. We see that a man and woman have different roles in life and in the house, yet the Jewish home and progeny they produce is the most successful amongst probably any culture in the world. Judaism is, the Jews are an educated people. We are a peace-loving people. Or as a friend of mine once said in Boca Raton, Jews are lovers. We don't like war. We don't like violence. We don't tend towards that in our culture. We're the envy of the world. We tend to have healthy Jewish children who know their place in the world, and knowing the structure, or that we have such a structured society where each person knows their place, loves who they are, loves their fellow Jew, and is not even allowed by Torah commandment to dislike their fellow Jew, that I would pose that the Western concept of rights and equality is not only detrimental to society, but particularly detrimental to Jewish children. And we see this among so many young Jewish children today who are spiritually wandering, don't know who they are, and are looking for something that I think I see a lot of happiness in those Jewish cultures around us, particularly frum cultures, where the obligations, responsibilities supersede the idea of the concept of rights. So that's it. I've spoken my piece. Now it's up to you to tell me why I'm wrong.
That's great, Bob. Before I open for discussion, I just want to say that as soon as I start talking that we're structured, Jews were structured and this and everything else, I'm sure that David and I immediately thought, when was the last time you were in Israel?
For me?
No, because you will see very unstructured turmoil society. But before we go to discussion, Howard, we have a Howard Kosov join us. You haven't been to our Perplexed group before. You want to say maybe like a minute or two to introduce yourself, Howard, who you are and where you're from?
Okay, I'm a retired orthodontist from Cleveland, Ohio. We moved here to Atlanta because we have grandchildren here, and in a fortunate event, I met Bob Dorsky at Chabad of North Fulton, and we've become friends with him and his wife and several others from that congregation. And he told me about the Zoom meeting that you have and invited me to attend, and I jumped at the opportunity, and here I am.
Welcome, Howard. And hopefully we'll see more. And before to discuss it, just to mention, we have no rules in this group. The more controversial opinion, the more it's opposite to what we think, the more we welcome it. And nobody gets burnt on the stake. That's our rule. No matter what you are, you're loved, cherished, appreciated, no matter what you believe or not believe. So let's open out the discussion to what Bob was presenting. Any comments, guys? Any observations?
Well, just to clarify the point made before, that we're Bainanim, the Alter Rebbe in Tanya explains, it depends on which definition you use. The Alter Rebbe in Tanya explains that the idea of Bainanim he's giving is a different one than people think. Most people think a Bainani is somebody who is sort of a mixture of good and evil. What the Alter Rebbe says is based Tzadikim, Bainanim, and the Rishoyim. So the Tzadik V'Tovlo is a Tzadik who's good, who has no evil left in him at all, and has no desire for evil. Then there's a tzaddik v'ralo. There's a tzaddik that's so-called evil to him, which means that he still has a little trace of desire someplace in him. He can't totally overcome and transform the evil to good, but he's got a little trace of it left. The Bainani is somebody who basically still has a desire fully for evil, but he overcomes it at every second, just every moment to moment to moment to moment. He fights his whole life to suppress it, and he basically never does anything wrong. Then there's the Rishoyim, Rasha V'Tovlo, somebody who's mostly good, but he still has at times when he fails, says Lashon Hara, does other things he shouldn't do. Then there's the Rasha V'Ralo, is a real, like a real Rasha, you know, like a real no goodnik, somebody who is always making trouble. So according to the Alter Rebbe's definition, but again, it's the definition, we would be Rishoyim V'Tovlo. We would be somebody who's really trying to do good. We occasionally slip up, but mostly do good. That's just the clarification.
That's good definition. Reuven, Bob, this conversation is going way too smooth. David, you need to bring some balance into it.
Well, I don't know what to say. Well, number one, I'm 46 and I'm a bachelor. So I guess I have no children. So I didn't fulfill the mitzvah. Although
None that you know of?
Not yet, not yet.
What?
None
Not
he
yet.
knows of.
Not yet, he said. Okay. The way, I mean, I was thinking about the Pru Urvu Maluot Haaretz V'Kibshuha a lot, because on the surface of it, you know, the text itself, and I always go back to the text, always, the text of the Torah is supersedes any rabbinical or any interpretation. You have to dig deep into it, into the text itself, because it's there. And it's the way it is. And this is what the Anan ben David, who is considered to be one of the first Karaites, he always said, "Chapisu be'oraita shafir ve'al tishalu midati," which means always look in the Torah and don't ask my opinion. So that's why there's no rabbis in my kind of Judaism. It doesn't sound like a mitzvah. It doesn't read like a mitzvah. And I don't know. I really don't know if I think it's in rabbinical Judaism that probably also would be a minority opinion, right? So most would interpret that as a mitzvah, but it doesn't read as a mitzvah. It doesn't read as a mitzvah. Just like Uchtavtam al luach libecha. So to write, to put the words of the Torah on the table of your heart. So what do? You put something here, and like you put the tefillin, which is like והיו לטוטפות בעיניך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בעיניך. Okay, so that's the meaning of the tefillin. You physically do that. But that's, again, not a mitzvah. And the Bible doesn't mention not even one person who ever wore tefillin. The word tefillin does not appear in the Bible, not even once. The entire Bible. And so Pru Urvu also doesn't read. It doesn't read like a mitzvah. So that's my take on it. About marriage, I cannot say a lot because I'm like I said, I'm ravak and I'm happy. Ravak v'tov lo.
Okay. All right.
So do you think that there is an obligation, does Torah place obligations upon us as opposed to in the United States where we're told we can do pretty much anything we want? Do we have obligations as Jews?
Yeah, of course, Torah puts obligation upon you. I think the only difference between people, whether it's rabbis or chachamim, or just the plain average Jew on the street, it's what you consider to be your obligation, except for what is actually written there to be done. So what you totally 100% understand as a mitzvah, and this is where the machlokot coming in. But of course, a Jew is I also one of the things that the people of Israel have is what the Hashem gave us, the sgula. V'haitem li sgula mikol ha'amim. Right? Everybody understands what I said?
Yeah.
Right.
Treasure.
The sgula, people use it today in a very, very wrong manner, saying if we are am sgula, so it's like we are better than other nations. But that's not true. The sgula that we have is that we have been given the mitzvah. We have been chosen because of the covenant with Abraham. We have been chosen by the Lord to do His commandments, and this is our sgula. This is what gives us the identity and also the discipline which leads to a civilization. But we can go wrong, and you just just look at us, right? We can go wrong. The fact that God gave us mitzvos did not make us, free ourselves or to get rid ourselves of free will, chofesh bechira. And we can say, well, I don't want the mitzvot, and you become like chofshi, right, chiloni, and that's it. And this is why I think also this is a very interesting, by the way, topic in the Torah, is the smichuta parshiyot, the two stories of giving the Torah on Mount Sinai, and the next thing is the golden calf. How do you even, if I was there, the last thing on my mind was to build a golden calf when I see the Kavod Hashem on the mountain. It's impossible. You can't do that. So how do you explain it? What's the logic behind this? Because it's impossible. I would be scared to death.
Well, but I think
Hashem in front of me.
David, we were all our souls are supposed to be there. I was there, and I remember when they were building golden calf, I didn't want to do it, but everybody rushed to do it, and I thought, listen, everybody's going to do it. Should I stand back and you're going to help out? So one thing led to another, and I was building golden calf with a whole bunch of guys.
I think this is a really good example of what I was talking about. Here's a society. The free will is, I'll build the golden calf. I'll do whatever I want. And here's Moshe Rabbeinu coming down the mountain saying, no, you can only live by obligations. We live in a society like that today. The question is, what's our obligation as a Jew in relationship to this society, this America, the United States we live in today? How would you react to the golden calf? How do you react to a lot of what's going on in our society today that certainly doesn't match the Torah view of the world? What should we be doing? Who should we be?
I would say, as an Israeli, I would say, as a former American Israeli, I would say, trying to link to our discussion last time when we talk about how do you spell this bad bug in reverse? I forget. We'll talk about cells and cytoplasm. I'm thinking, I just as the day was displaying it, I happened to look on our picture. That's what Karen was talking about, right? You guys all recognize this picture, especially you guys, the doctors. Oh, we have a bunch of doctors. Everybody doctors actually here, except Dave, you and me. So, and I was thinking Torah is like DNA. Right inside there's a DNA in the core, right? Once you go outside, DNA, as we discussed, as Karen explained to us last time, DNA sheds off the copy, which is RNA. And RNA is going around, and they become, as they come from a core into the cytoplasm and floating in the cytoplasm around, they create amino acids, which come out from a cell, and then proteins get built on it, the whole process. So if Torah is DNA, outside the cytoplasm is a rabbinical Judaism. And once you have rabbinical Judaism, you're floating in the cytoplasm and you continuously get attacked by the, guess what? Who knows the name of? By, starts with an L, lysosomes. And the lysosomes going to tackle this stuff and trying to understand, is it a natural, genuine Torah or non-genuine Torah? And continuous battle. And we, in rabbinical Judaism, we're continuously trying to float in the cytoplasm and explain the peculiarities, exactness, and proper. Do we pray on Monday and Tuesday? And Rabbi Yochanan says this, and Res L'Chaycha says this. Sometimes, as Dave points out, forgetting that, don't forget, it has to come to the DNA. There's this thing there, the Torah, which sometimes can go too far straight to the cytoplasm. They're forgetting the whole message. So I tried to link it to our discussion last time on science to what we're just saying today.
I just want to say just 2 sentences. I just wanted to tell Bob, just answer Bob, you know, about the United States and everything. I watch a lot on YouTube what's happening in the United States. I know that, you know, I have a brother and a sister who left for the United States a few years ago, and they are in Miami. And they don't really know what I'm talking about because, you know, I listen to Ben Shapiro and, you know, all these IndieWire people, Candace Owens and Matt Walsh, although they are Catholic and Christians, but, you know, it's because of Ben Shapiro, I give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they say so. But in other words, I see lots of balagan, whether it's on Fox News or CNN or Daily Wire and all of that. All of the transgenderism and the far left ideology and all of those things. And I think that your obligation, Bob, and I think I think it's also the obligation of my brother, my younger brother and sister, is to come back to Israel. Actually, just leave. I know it's difficult. I am not. We're having a little bit of a political balagan here. Balagan is a mess, by the way, if somebody doesn't know this word. A little bit of a political mess, a little bit of an ideological mess, and it's a little bit of expensive to live here. Don't ask me why. I don't think it's justifiable. But yeah, I definitely agree that for probably lots of, you know, most of American Jews, whether religious or not, doesn't matter. But it would be a personal sacrifice to come here.
David, it's exactly personal sacrifice. If somebody comes here, has to really know why they come here. Because I would venture to guess, with no offense, because I love my brothers in Israel. I have family, I have kids in Israel, grandkids. If any, especially in Beersheba, if I don't know anyone in Atlanta in our community who's coming to Beersheba with their rosy eyes, we're in Israel, look at this, it's Israeli air we're breathing. After 2 days in the supermarket, I think they'll be ready to get on the plane and come back to America. I mean, if you're not trained, Israel here trains you to not to give up. It's not, I would say 99% of people I know will not be able to adapt here. They'll say, wait a minute, I was standing in line for 40 minutes and then right in front of me, the window closed and they say, it's not this window, you should be standing by that. And by the way, it's not today, but on Thursday. Okay. A typical American doesn't accept that. What kind of thing it is? And tomorrow, the same thing.
I would say
it says there's 3 things you only get through Isurim, through difficulties. Olam haba, Limud Torah, study of Torah, and Eretz Yisrael. Those 3 things only through Isurim.
Yes. Listen, I have a question. We have about 9 minutes. We'll continue discussion. But I was thinking, David and I talked a little bit for the next time topic, unless somebody else has ideas to do a 14-minute presentation. Would you be interested to talk? I was thinking a lot about it. And David and I will spoke about maybe tomorrow we're going to have coffee and discuss a little more. When the Supreme Court of Israel is going through all this balagan by trying to define itself, should the court be left or right, religious, non-religious? Should the Knesset, our parliament, should get the court, should override constitutions that we don't have, whatnot? To compare American system of Supreme Court to Israeli system of Supreme Court and to ideal system of Supreme Court or Sanhedrin that we're supposed to have, like maybe in King David's times. And just to take 1 minute of this, if you're interested, is like that. When think about it, Sanhedrin originally, essentially, if somebody dies in Sanhedrin, they have to get another judge, another Sanhedrin guy. Sanhedrin itself essentially combines together and guided what they would feel by the Torah, get another guy. If the judge dies in Supreme Court of America, basically the Senate, Congress nominates a guy, president nominates, it goes the whole process, and the guy goes to the Supreme Court. So if the Congress of America at that time happens to be a leftist, the judge being kind of leftist, he shouldn't be, and the court becomes leftist. If the judge happens to conservative to the right, then the court will tend to be to the right. So the judges over time will reflect whatever society, because we Americans elect the Congress, and Congress essentially appoint the judges. So it comes in from a secular, what's right according to the country mind. In Israel today, Supreme Court is not 9 people like America, but like 37 people. But the idea is similar. When somebody dies in court, they have to get a new guy. The way they do it, they get, like, say, 4 guys from the court, 2 guys from the Knesset, and 2 guys from outside, David and I, go in, and we collectively elect. But because it's still dominated mostly by Supreme Court guys, then the new guy comes in, will still reflect what Supreme Court of Israel kind of wants to do. Would you like to discuss?
I'm sorry, I don't take the blame. I'm just the cameraman.
Would that be subject we would like to talk next time?
What are you getting to, Lev? Lev, where are you getting to? We only have a few minutes left. What's
We
the
have
point?
7 minutes, nothing. I mean, I would just,
Let me ask
okay.
Karen and Howard, just to finish up our discussion.
Yeah, Karen.
What do you guys think that we should be teaching our children vis-a-vis Jewish law and the American view of a world where the individual does whatever they want? Should we teach our children, you should get married to have Jewish children to follow Torah? You should get married to work at Goldman Sachs? What is it that we should be teaching our children in this American society?
Bob.
Go ahead, Karen, Howard, what do you think? That's a
Karen,
question
Howard,
to
you
you.
should speak too.
I think
Karen,
I
go
was
ahead.
pondering essentially the same question. What do we teach our children? And as Lev was saying, you pick up with the DNA. It's the starting idea that God is one. Everything comes from the same source. So we are connected to everything, and thus should conduct our lives with respect and awareness of everything else that happens. My dad had a line, the chain is only as strong as its weakest link. So to strengthen ourselves makes us a strong link in the chain, but we're still part of that greater chain or web. And it seems that there's nothing in this life that is clearly this or that. It's always a dynamic interaction. And the minute you think you have a handle on getting it settled, then there's a change. So you always have to be mindful of, how is this affecting me? How is this affecting somebody else? Which requires compassion and empathy for yourself as well as for the people you're dealing with, and then compounding that, an awareness of what's going on beyond the immediate transaction between you and the person you're dealing with. What are the backstories? In other words, you always have to be mindful and
That's
compassionate.
Nice.
Nice.
Howard, do you have any thoughts?
I think children, especially young children, should be taught traditional Jewish values and stay as far away from wokeness as is possible. And so from what I see, I'm a congregant at Chabad of North Fulton, as Bob knows. I've seen a dramatic shift in the number of young children who are going to school there because their parents didn't want them to be exposed to the mishigas that's going on in the public school systems. And I think that's a good trend, but I'm sure there's still plenty of people who don't have the option of affording going to a Jewish preschool or whatever. And if we as a country, as a nation, don't stop the school systems and the teacher unions from teaching things that are totally inappropriate, then I think we're heading in for big trouble as a country. So I guess my answer is teaching Jewish children to be Jewish is paramount.
All right, and I'd throw a wrench into that. Since so much of the service and the service that I attend is conducted in Hebrew, which is terrific if you have a handle on the Hebrew. But I think that there's more than just raising our children and conducting our own lives with Jewish values. Maybe it's simply live those values so that they become evident to other people and they say, gee, what do you have? How do I tune into it? But that gets back to the question of how do I tune into a value that is a life that is sacred and really awesome, truly awesome. If you're living those values, people would have to first learn the language. Is there a way without messing it up to convey Judaism so that the man in the street can say, wow, that's cool. How can I connect with that as well? And I don't have an answer, but I think it's necessary. I grew up in New York and I'm a Jew by choice, was exposed to it there. My mother was a choir director and I went and I learned the prayers and singing, and it was wonderful. Then I moved to the Midwest. There are a lot more Jews by choice in the two places in the Midwest that I've lived. So obviously other people have found this wonderful thing and figured out how to connect with it. But the one reservation I have where I'm affiliated now is that it's all behind this shield of something that not everybody is able to connect with the language.
To access it.
How do we do it without taking the mystery out? Because when you leave the Hebrew, you're turning it into scientific jargonese, and it's terrible.
Can I say two things? Okay, so one is to Bob, and the other is to Karen. So
we
to
only
Bob,
have a minute, David.
Okay, so to Bob, if you can just read Yeshayahu Leibowitz, because he's one of the greatest philosophers of the Jewish world in the 20th century, and his essential question was, how do I work? How do I do Avodat Hashem in this world the way it is? So that's to Bob, and to Karen, I would say when you talk about values. And maybe I don't know. It seems to me the way because you guys are in the United States. When you talk about values, maybe it's a little bit because of the Goyim influence on the way you see yourself as a Jew.
Very good. Listen, we only have 20 seconds, so we will finish on that. I want to thank Bob for doing the 14-minute special presentation.
Welcome.
If anybody, Howard, Reuven, Karen, David, whoever has an idea to present, please let us know, and we'll do this next time. And Tuesday at 8 o'clock Israeli time, 1 o'clock p.m. We'll see you again in our Perplexed. Shabbat Shalom.
Okay.